For over a quarter of a century, it was the invincible fortress of the battlefield, a main battle tank whose legend was built on a simple, incredible fact. It had never been destroyed by an enemy in combat. From the Balkans to Iraq, the British Challenger 2 earned its reputation as an unstoppable force, a steel behemoth that shrugged off attacks that would have obliterated lesser machines. Its very name became synonymous with survivability. But in the war-torn fields of southern Ukraine, the unthinkable happened. On September 4, 2023, video emerged showing a Challenger 2 engulfed in smoke and flames. The legend was broken. The invincible tank had finally been defeated. The story of the Challenger 2's first combat loss, however, isn't a simple tale of failure. It's a complex and revealing episode that pulls back the curtain on the secrets of its armor, its formidable firepower, and the brutal realities of the modern battlefield. The truth behind the Challenger 2's first combat loss reveals why the death of a legend may have, paradoxically, created a new kind of fear. So how did this tank earn such a fearsome reputation? To get the Challenger 2, you have to understand the philosophy behind it. Unlike Soviet and Russian tank design, which often prioritizes mass production and speed, British doctrine emphasized one thing above all else: protection. This tank was conceived from the ground up with the primary goal of keeping its four-person crew alive. This thinking was forged in the fires of the Cold War, where NATO planners expected to face waves of Soviet tanks pouring through Germany. The British knew they'd be outnumbered, so their tanks had to be survivors. They had to take a punch, then another, and still be able to fight back. And here's where the philosophy gets really interesting, because the British weren't just thinking about surviving one hit, they were designing for sustained combat operations where a tank might face dozens of threats over days or even weeks of fighting. Soviet doctrine relied on massive armored formations, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numbers. NATO couldn't match those numbers, so they needed qualitative superiority. Each NATO tank had to be worth 3 or 4 Soviet tanks in combat effectiveness and survivability. The Challenger 2 represents the culmination of decades of British tank design evolution. Its predecessor, the Challenger 1, saw combat in the Gulf War and performed well, but the Ministry of Defense wanted something even better. They wanted a tank that could dominate any conceivable threat for the next 30 to 40 years. Development began in the late 1980s, with the first prototypes rolling out in the early 1990s. The design incorporated lessons learned from the Challenger 1, the American M1 Abrams, and even captured intelligence on Soviet tank capabilities. The result is the Challenger 2's armor. Its hull and turret are protected by second-generation Chobham armor, officially known as Dorchester. The exact composition is one of the world's most closely guarded military secrets. But it's not just a thick slab of steel, it's a sophisticated, multi-layered sandwich of materials, likely including ceramics and steel alloys. These layers work together to break up and dissipate the focused energy of incoming projectiles, whether it's the molten jet of a HEAT round or the brute force of a kinetic energy penetrator. Now, let's talk about what makes Chobham armor so special, because this isn't your grandfather's tank armor. Traditional armor is just thick steel. Stop a projectile through sheer mass. But modern anti-tank weapons use shaped charges that concentrate explosive energy into a narrow jet traveling at several kilometers per second, or kinetic penetrators made of depleted uranium or tungsten moving at hypersonic speeds. This incredible protection was put to the test during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The Challenger 2's performance was nothing short of legendary. In one famous incident near Basra, a Challenger 2 got bogged down in a ditch and was hammered by as many as 14 rocket-propelled grenades and a Milan anti-tank missile, yet it survived. The crew was unharmed, and after being pulled out, the tank was back in service just hours later. Let me paint the picture of how insane this incident actually was. The tank, call sign Brutus, was part of the Black Watch Regiment supporting operations near Basra. It got stuck in an irrigation ditch. These things happen in combat and immediately became a target. Iraqi fighters, seeing an immobilized British tank, swarmed the position. RPG teams engaged from multiple angles. These weren't poorly trained militia. These were experienced fighters who knew how to use their weapons effectively. 14 RPG hits. Think about that. Each RPG-7 carries a shaped charge warhead designed to penetrate hundreds of millimeters of rolled steel armor. Any one of those hits could have knocked out older tank designs like the T-55 or even given a T-72 serious problems. Against Brutus, they might as well have been throwing rocks. The crew inside reported hearing the impacts, loud bangs, the tank shaking, but no penetrations. The armor held. Then came the Milan. This is a serious anti-tank guided missile, wire-guided, accurate, with a warhead specifically designed to defeat modern armor. It hit the tank's frontal arc, exactly where you'd aim if you wanted to kill it, and it did. Nothing. The warhead detonated against the Dorchester armor. The crew felt the impact, and then they just kept waiting for recovery. After being extracted from the ditch, engineers inspected Brutus. Scorch marks, some superficial damage to external equipment, but the armor itself? Intact. The tank was deemed combat-ready and returned to service within hours. Throughout the entire Iraq conflict, the official record states that no Challenger 2s were lost to enemy fire. That said, the invincible tag was more myth than reality. Several tanks were seriously damaged by enemy action, including one penetrated by an IED that severely wounded the driver. This IED incident deserves elaboration because it's important for understanding the Challenger 2's vulnerabilities. The tank was struck by a massive roadside bomb. Estimates suggest it was upwards of 100 kilograms of explosives, possibly more. The blast occurred directly underneath the vehicle, the absolute worst-case scenario for any tank. Tank armor is designed to protect against frontal and side threats. The belly armor is necessarily thinner because you have to balance weight and mobility. The explosion created an enormous overpressure wave that traveled up through the hull. The driver, positioned at the front lower hull, took the brunt of it. He survived, but suffered severe injuries, including multiple fractures and internal trauma. The tank itself was seriously damaged. The hull was cracked, running gear was destroyed, and it was written off as beyond economical repair. But here's the crucial point. In a lesser tank, that entire crew would likely have been killed. The compartmentalized design, the crew positioning, the overall structural integrity, all of it contributed to saving 3 out of 4 crew members from what should have been a total catastrophic kill. The only time a Challenger 2 was completely destroyed was in a tragic friendly fire incident when one Challenger 2 mistakenly engaged another, killing 2 crewmen. But against the enemy, its operational record was seen as perfect. This friendly fire incident, which occurred on March 25, 2003, remains one of the most devastating moments in British armored warfare history. 2 Challenger 2s from different squadrons were operating in the same area near Basra during night operations. Due to a combination of communication failures, identification errors, and the chaos of combat, one tank crew misidentified the other Challenger 2 as an enemy vehicle and engaged with its main gun. A 120mm armor-piercing round from a Challenger 2, fired at close range, is one of the few things that can actually defeat Challenger 2 armor. The round penetrated the targeted tank's turret, killing the commander and operator instantly. It was a horrific reminder that even the best armor in the world can't protect you from your own weapons. The incident led to major changes in British military identification procedures and communications protocols. This string of successes cemented its mythos. Entering service in 1998, that legend held for nearly 25 years. No enemy had managed to knock one out completely until Ukraine. The story of the Challenger 2 in Ukraine isn't one of failure, it's about a legend being reforged in the fires of modern war. For decades, its invincibility was a powerful myth. That myth is now gone, shattered by drone warfare and massive minefields. But in its place, a new, more tangible legend is being built. The Challenger 2 isn't indestructible. No tank is. But its destruction revealed a deeper truth. It is one of the most survivable tanks on the planet, a machine built to protect its crew against almost anything. It confirmed that its rifled cannon is a sniper's tool, able to dominate fights at ranges its opponents can only dream of. The paradox is that in its first combat death, the Challenger 2 proved its worth more than 25 years of undefeated service ever could. It showed Russia that even if they kill the machine, they can't easily kill the soldiers inside, and that's a far more frightening prospect. Every Challenger 2 crew that survives a destroyed vehicle can be put into another tank, bringing their experience and skills back to the battlefield. That's a strategic nightmare for an opponent already struggling with manpower and morale. The Challenger 2's story also raises a bigger question. In an age of cheap, disposable drones that can strike from any angle, is the era of the heavily armored, multi-million-dollar main battle tank drawing to a close? The evidence from Ukraine suggests the answer is no, but with important caveats. Tanks remain essential, but they must evolve. Active protection systems, better integration with drone coverage, enhanced mine protection, and refined tactics are all necessary adaptations. The Challenger 2, with its proven survivability and devastating firepower, shows that properly designed and employed armor still has a decisive role to play. So what do you think? Are main battle tanks like the Challenger 2 still the kings of the battlefield, or are we watching the slow extinction of an entire class of weapons? And more specifically, knowing what you know now about the Challenger 2's performance, the crew survivability, the long-range accuracy, the ability to take punishment that would destroy lesser tanks, would you want to face one on the battlefield? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this deep dive into the Challenger 2's combat history fascinating, make sure to subscribe because we've got more videos coming on modern armor, the evolution of tank warfare, and how Western and Russian military technology actually stack up in real combat conditions. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.